I hate YouTubers that ramble on, so let's get right into it. In this video, I'm going to talk about my 7 best tips to improve your skill as a DJ. Number 1, record your sessions. This is a great pro tip because, as you can imagine, when you're mixing around and messing around and DJing, like say in your own home, you're like, well, I have this mess up, I'll rewind a bit and try that transition again or whatever. But when you're recording, you have this light added pressure of, oh, this is all being recorded, obviously, and therefore if I mess up, it's going to be recorded in that WAV file or MP3 file or whatever the case is. What I used to do, especially like say when I was hustling a lot on DJing, and this is one of my best pro tips, it's kind of odd, is I DJ for an hour and I record that entire hour session. Then I would take that hour clip and replay it, and I'd work out to it. That way, I get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Getting that DJ session in, and of course getting my workout in, but then when I'd be working out, I'd listen back to that DJ recording, and I'd take notes. I'd like mess up here, and I'd be like, okay, next time, beat mash better. Focus on EQing more. Try to take more risks, whatever the case is. And that's a great way to really be super critical, because as you can imagine, when you're DJing, it's a very first-person perspective. But when you listen back to that mix, it's kind of looking at it from a third-party perspective. I like to pretend like, okay, let's say one of my friends came to me and said, hey, Mark, I got this great DJ mix. Do you mind reviewing it, giving some constructive criticism? That's always the angle I like to have. Recording yourself is one of the best places to start. Number 2, DJ for at least an hour. Like I said before, when I record my sessions, I always do about an hour. And this is a big thing I suggest, especially for beginning DJs, because when you force yourself every single time to practice to do minimum an hour, there might be points when you're like, shoot, I don't think I have as much music as I thought I would. Or maybe you're DJing and you're like, oh, shoot, I'm not going to lie, around minute 45, I think this is kind of boring. Like maybe the set's kind of lost its appeal after half an hour. And I think this is really good to, one, like I said, if you're in that moment, you're recording yourself, you're forcing yourself to DJ for an hour, let's say your computer crashes, let's say something goes wrong that you didn't expect, well, you're still in that mode, and I always try to picture myself like, all right, let's say I'm DJing out live, I have to DJ an hour set, which is pretty typical. This shows you like, what if something goes wrong? How do I deal with these odd situations? How do I keep that energy up and bring a crowd through a journey for an entire hour, and a lot more. Any single time you're DJing, force yourself to DJ for at least an hour. Number 3, always try different combinations. This is a great tip I heard from Laidback Luke, who is a phenomenal DJ. And when you start DJing, especially let's say if you're recording your sessions, DJing for at least an hour, it is inevitable, trust me, that you're going to used to be transitioning from one song straight to another song. And you'll get used to certain combos. Like, all right, I'm going to do this one song, then immediately after that song, I'm going to do this song, and then this song. And you have this like almost like 3-way combo, so to speak, of boom, boom, and boom. However, if you keep doing that, your sets eventually will start to sound super similar, especially to your dedicated fans, to your friends, people listening to your mixes, and they will be like, I promise you, oh yeah, he's DJing Joe Schmo record, he's definitely now going to go into Bob Smith. I know this transition, he's done it 5 times already. So one great pro tip Laidback Luke has is every single time you're DJing, when you go to a new song, it has to be a song that you've never done that transition to before. So let's say if I go from Joe Schmo song to Bob Smith, I can never go from Joe Schmo to Bob Smith ever again. I have to go from Joe Schmo to, I don't know, any other song. This will, 1, make your sets more interesting, but 2, make you a way more versatile DJ, as now you can mix in to anything. Number 4, blend different genres. Now this can be a lot of fun. I've actually done this with some of my friends, where let's say they're like, okay, Mark, I want you to go from Skrillex to Adele. And I'm like, ooh, okay, let me see what I can do, right? And I think when it comes to transitioning between different genres, especially polar opposites like Adele and Skrillex, so you're looking at like pop and dubstep, so to speak, it can make it like a fun, interesting challenge. And the more that you do that, the better you will be about just moving around and bouncing around a lot in your sets, and you'll get a lot more smooth at doing it as well. Even if you're like, Mark, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a house DJ. I stick at 128 BPM, that's it. Or I'm a dubstep DJ. I only focus on heavy bass bangers. I never really include any of those genres in my DJing. I promise you, even if you only do it when practicing and everything, this is gonna make you a way more versatile DJ overall, because it puts you in the space of like, all right, how do I smoothly, not just a beat matched transition, but how do I smoothly and almost if anything, psychologically transition from dubstep to pop while making it smooth, not making it too harsh, not making it seem too random, and having it flow in a great way. Number 5, mashups. This is pretty straightforward, and that is when you're DJing, try to see if you can do any mashups of 2 songs playing at the same time. This is good for a couple different reasons. 1, it's just good mixing, it's good practice. But 2, and more importantly, almost always, unless you're doing something very specific, this requires you to use a third deck. So let's say I have one song playing that's the main foundation, then let's say I have another song, or let's say an acapella, or another song's being mashed up with it. Well, if I want to transition out to something else while these still 2 are playing, I now need a third deck. So I have my foundation record, maybe this one later on top of it, however I'm doing it, however I'm doing that mashup, and now I need a third record to bring in, and now I'm mixing, essentially, 3 songs at the exact same time. This is great practice, and I'm not gonna lie, you'd be surprised. There are some mashups that I've done out live, or even when practicing, that I'm like, oh, this could be a great mashup, and it is trash, it's horrible. There are other times where I would have, in a million years, never predicted it would work, and somehow it does. I remember one time I did a live mashup at a DJ event where I mixed Bubble Butt by Major Lazer and Total Fascination by Pretty Lights, and it actually worked really well, and the crowd went nuts. The crowd loved it. Now, if you asked me before, could you mix Major Lazer and Diplo with Pretty Lights? I'd be like, yeah, I mean, maybe, but I don't know if those would mix well. It might just seem too polar opposite, but it crushed it. Number 6, mix different BPMs. Now, this is kind of similar to mixing between different genres, and there are numerous different ways to do this, whether it's a hard cut, beat matching, and just adjusting the tempo in a very smooth way. I mean, I could go on and on. Maybe I'll do a video about that in the future if you'd like me to. This is huge, because even for some house DJs who are like, hey, I'm sticking at 128, they might bounce around between 128 and 124. Not a huge jump, but you still have to do some type of beat adjustment. However, for me, sometimes I'll be in Moombahton and like say 110, 112, sometimes even 115, and I'll then go to, like say 75 BPM, or then to 140. And being able to smoothly transition between different BPMs makes you a way better mixer overall. And I promise you, like I said, even if you only stick at 128 for house, 140 for dubstep, 110 for Moombahton, whatever, by being able to bounce around between different BPMs, switching in that BPM seems light years easier than trying to figure out all these kind of technical techniques of like, maybe I'll loop this, and while that's looping, I'll add the filter, and then make something else in, and then bring it in on the build. And when I'm practicing, especially, I'll try to bounce around BPMs as much as possible, almost unknowingly so, because obviously it's not like I'm doing it out live, but this trains me to very, very rapidly and in a very smooth way go all over the place. Number 7, live stream. If anything, this actually might be my best pro tip, because when I first started DJing, live streaming wasn't a thing. Now it's everywhere. You can live stream on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all the above, actually. You can live stream on Twitch, right? Whatever the case is. And this is huge for numerous different reasons. 1, you're recording it. For most live streams, they do save that recording. You don't have to post it out and make it public, but you can kind of keep it if you want, maybe review it, or you can make it public if you want. The second thing is most live streams are pretty long. So like I said before, with that hour technique, this does, allow you to DJ for, let's say, a long time, because it's kind of in the aspect and kind of in the craft of streaming. But the third thing, most importantly, it gives you a crowd. Even if, let's say, you're DJing and you're live streaming on YouTube, and let's say nobody's watching it, even still, there is still this added slight pressure of like, oh, no one's watching it now, but someone could pop in at any second. And I think this adds a very realistic pressure then when it comes to DJing. Every DJ's been there before, and you're like, shoot, you can see the red flashing on your CDJs or on your software or whatever you're using. You're like, shoot, I don't know what song to mix to next. Oh God, what do I do? Do I have like a lull and talk on the mic? Do I just hard cut to another song? Do I have enough time to beat match into something else to make it smooth? And you're in this frantic moment, and when you're doing this live, if you mess up, you're messing up in front of people. And I think that added pressure just makes you a way better DJ overall, because of course, when you are DJing and you're doing DJ gigs, you're not DJing for nobody, you're DJing for a crowd. And I think this live stream aspect is a great, of course, free option to practice DJing and, of course, get your name out there. There are a lot of DJs who've posted a lot of live stream DJ sets on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, etc., and they start kind of building a following and a name for themselves because people get used to watching them live stream. This is the #1 pro tip I can give you for this entire video. And now, a bonus tip. This is a fun one that I do a lot, and that is the quick switch challenge. Now, this is something I don't do ever out live. Ever. And as you can imagine, training, so to speak, to be a really good DJ, kind of similar, but also kind of different than DJing out live. What I'll do is sometimes when I'm DJing, I'll say, okay, for the next 30 minutes, for example, I'm going to try to mix in as many songs as possible. The second one's playing, I'm instantly scrolling through my library, trying to figure out the next one that kind of mixes well. I try to sync it up and beat match and etc. And what this does is it trains you to be unbelievably quick while also being smooth on the fly. There are some times I've done this challenge and I'll mix in an insane amount of records in only a half hour or an hour or however long I'm doing the quick switch challenge. This is a really fun one too, especially with friends, where I'll say, okay, give me the next song. And they'll say, okay, Hello by Adele. And let's say I'm playing like I Can't Stop by Flux. And I have to transition into Hello by Adele smoothly and quick. I'm like, oh shoot, how do I make this work? And let's be honest, sometimes it doesn't work at all. But I think the craft and the practice of trying to make almost impossible transitions kind of work is a great way to practice and get better as a DJ.